What if everything you wanted to know about a woman's past wasn't in the stories she tells, but in the ones her body remembers, in the little habits, the slight tension in her voice, the way she flinches at certain words, or lights up when she feels seen? What if the truth wasn't spoken, but leaked out in behavior she doesn't even realize she's showing? Here's what most guys don't know and never even think to notice. You don't have to ask a woman about her past to understand who she is. In fact, the moment you start asking, she starts editing. Not because she's lying, but because people protect their wounds. They filter. They shape their story for safety. But her real past, the one that shaped how she loves, how she trusts, how she reacts when things go wrong, that part of her doesn't live in words. It lives in reflexes, in timing, in silence. And if you know how to look, really look, you'll start to see it. The clues, the patterns, the truth behind the mask. Because a woman doesn't just talk about her past, she lives it, she wears it. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to read those signs. Not with interrogation, but with clarity, so you never again get blindsided by a story you didn't ask to be part of. Number 1, her relationship with attention. One of the easiest ways to glimpse into a woman's emotional past is to quietly observe how she handles attention, especially the kind that comes from men. Not just how she reacts when you compliment her, but how she carries herself in a room, how she moves through a space when she knows eyes are watching, how she posts online, the kind of photos she shares, the captions, the timing, the tone, how she responds when the spotlight lands on her even for just a second. Does she receive it with calm grace, like it's familiar, no big deal? Or does she glow like someone who's starving for it? Like this is the first time in a long time she's felt seen. Now pay close attention to the things she says when no one's asking. If she constantly brings up how many guys hit on her at the gym, or how full her DMs are, or how she can't go anywhere without getting attention, it may sound like just conversation, but often it's not about the story. It's about the need behind the story. It's not just what happened, it's how much she needs you to know it happened. Because that need, that urgency to be noticed, admired, chased, that often comes from something older than you, a deeper story, one you didn't write, a woman who was emotionally neglected, overlooked, or made to feel invisible, whether in a past relationship or even back in childhood, often learns to measure her worth by how many eyes are on her. And here's the thing, she might not even know she's doing it. She might think she's just confident or playful, but under the surface, it's not about vanity. It's about validation. There's a world of difference between a woman who enjoys attention and a woman who needs it to feel whole. The first one, she's fun, playful, light. The second, she's fragile. Not because she's weak, but because attention has become her emotional oxygen. And when it stops coming from you, even briefly, she may start searching for it elsewhere. Not out of disloyalty, but out of survival. It's not cheating. It's emotional addiction. It's a nervous system conditioned to seek approval like a hit, like a fix. That doesn't make her a bad person. It just means she's carrying a wound that was never fully seen and never fully healed. You're not looking at what she wears or how many selfies she posts. That's surface. What you're looking for is why. Why the constant affirmation? Why the curated image? Why the hunger to be noticed? Because underneath that hunger is a history. A woman's relationship with attention is never random. It's a reflection, a memory, a map. And if you know how to read it, It'll tell you exactly what kind of love she's been missing and whether she's ready to receive something real or still chasing echoes of the past. Number 2, how she talks about other women. You can learn more about a woman's emotional past by listening to how she talks about other women than by listening to anything she says about herself. It's in the throwaway comments, the little jabs, the offhand critiques, the way she describes her friends, her co-workers, even strangers walking down the street. Does she speak with kindness, empathy, or at least neutrality? Or does her tone always carry something sharp, something bitter, something just a little too personal, when every woman she mentions is fake, or trying too hard, or probably cheating on her boyfriend? That's not just colorful commentary. That's a projection. That's a pattern. That's pain, wearing the mask of sarcasm. You're not just hearing her opinion of others, you're hearing the echoes of comparison, betrayal, or insecurity that still live inside her. The way she describes other women is almost never about them. It's about her. And the more she dissects, judges, or dismisses them, the more she reveals about the fractures in her own reflection. Sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes it's venom wrapped in a smile. She's cute, I guess, but a little desperate. She always needs attention. I'm not like that. Those little digs might seem harmless at first, even funny, but they often come from a place of deep rivalry, a learned instinct to compete rather than connect. And that instinct doesn't appear out of nowhere. It's shaped, molded, forged in experiences where trust was broken, friendships became battlefields, or love was something you had to fight for. When a woman says, "I just don't get along with other women," it might sound independent, even cool. But often, it's not independence, it's isolation. It's the armor she built after too many wounds. It's protection, disguised as personality. A woman who truly feels safe in herself will rarely feel the need to tear others down. She'll speak about other women with curiosity, not contempt, with awareness, not assumption, because the way she sees others reflects the way she sees herself. And here's the deeper truth when she judges women for being flirty, for dressing a certain way, for having success. It often points to something unresolved. Maybe she's been cheated on and now sees flirtation as a threat. Maybe she's always felt behind and can't celebrate someone else's wins without feeling like she's losing. Or maybe she's been betrayed by someone she once trusted, and now every woman is a potential danger zone. This doesn't mean she's toxic. It means she's been taught by life, by experience, by pain that connection isn't safe. That comparison is survival. And until that lesson gets rewritten, she'll keep seeing every woman as a rival, not a reflection. Your job isn't to fix her, it's to notice, to observe, to understand that when she speaks about other women, she's revealing something about her emotional history, something raw, something real, something she may not even be ready to face herself. So next time she talks about that girl at work or the type she can't stand, listen closely, not to the gossip, but to the wound behind it, because in those quiet criticisms, her past is whispering. Number 3, conflict style. What she does when things go wrong. If you really want to understand who someone is and what they've lived through, don't just watch how they act when things are going right. Watch how they behave when things go wrong. Because conflict is where the past comes to the surface, not always in shouting or drama. Sometimes it's in the silence, the tension, the sudden change in tone, the way her eyes shift when something doesn't go as planned, the way she pulls back, or pushes harder. It's not about the fight. It's about the pattern. When you forget something small, when plans change, when she feels misunderstood or unseen, what happens next? Does she shut down without a word? Does she lash out with sarcasm or guilt? Or does she breathe, ground herself, and talk it through? Because those responses, they're not just about you. They're emotional echoes from her history, old defense systems, muscle memory from moments where vulnerability wasn't safe, a woman who was abandoned, emotionally ignored, or betrayed. Often reacts to conflict not based on the present, but based on who failed her in the past. If she goes quiet, it might be because she learned long ago that speaking up leads to rejection, punishment, or worse, indifference. And if she escalates quickly, accusing, defending, overreacting, it might be because in her world, the only way to stay safe was to strike first. It's not always logical, but it's real. It's learned. It's survival. You'll see it in the way she interprets your smallest actions. If you take too long to reply, she might feel abandoned. If you disagree, she might feel attacked. If you need space, she might panic, thinking you're already halfway out the door. And the truth is, it's not because of what you did. It's because someone else wrote that script. You're just walking into the scene at the wrong time. Now here's what matters. You're not supposed to fix her. You're not her therapist. But you do need to recognize the pattern. Because if you don't see it clearly, you'll take it personally. You'll think you're the problem, when really, you're just the trigger for an old emotional wound that's never been given space to breathe. Conflict is where her past speaks the loudest. And if you're listening closely, you'll realize she's not fighting with you. She's fighting with the version of love she learned long before you ever showed up. Some women avoid conflict at all costs, pretending everything's fine, while quietly building resentment that explodes later. Others turn every disagreement into a test, pushing you away just to see if you'll come back. And some have learned how to pause, reflect, and express themselves with clarity. That's the one who's done the work. That's the one who's faced her past, not just buried it. So the next time something small turns into something bigger, don't just look at what she says. Look at what it means. Look at the emotional reflex behind it. Because you're not just seeing her response, you're witnessing her story. And the question is, can you handle the truth when it doesn't come in words? Number 4, her relationship timeline without asking directly. You don't need to ask her when her last relationship was. You don't need to say, so, how long were you together? Or why did it end? Because the truth. Most people won't give you the real story, not because they're hiding something, but because memory is messy. And emotion, especially the kind that still lingers, rarely fits into a neat little summary. So instead of digging, you observe, you listen. You pay attention to the details that slip through when she thinks you're not analyzing. When she tells a story and says, "We used to go there all the time," you pause on that word, that's not just nostalgia. That's a breadcrumb. That's a name she didn't mention, a face she didn't describe, but it's there, in the language, in the way she pauses after she says it, in the silence that follows. You don't need to ask who we is. You already know. And if she's still talking in we, she may not have fully returned to me. You'll also notice how she handles time. A woman who says, "Oh, that was 2 years ago," probably isn't trying to be precise. She's giving you a timeline without knowing it. She's letting you in. But if she avoids dates completely, if she glosses over transitions like they were nothing, If she skips straight from "I moved here" to "and now I'm just focusing on myself," something's missing, something unspoken. And in that gap, there's usually something she doesn't want to revisit or something she hasn't fully made peace with. Listen to the way she talks about change. After everything fell apart, I had to rebuild from scratch. That year was rough. These are not just dramatic phrases. They're landmarks, emotional milestones, markers of moments where something or someone shaped the woman you see now. You're not reading a report. You're reading between the lines. And the truth is, her history isn't in the answers she gives. It's in the moments she skips, the pauses, the hesitation. The quick subject changes when you get too close. Some women will casually mention, "Yeah, it ended, but we're still cool." And maybe they are. But if she keeps bringing him up, if his name finds its way into every other story, that's not coincidence, that's residue. That's someone who still lives in the background of her thoughts, whether she admits it or not. Others will say nothing at all. No exes, no stories, just silence. And that silence, that can speak louder than anything else. Because sometimes, the pain is so deep, so raw, that even the name feels too heavy to carry into the conversation. You don't need to interrogate her to know where she's been. Just watch how her past leaks through her present, how often she glances backwards when she talks about love, how tight her smile gets when you mention commitment, how fast she changes the subject when the word trust comes up. These are the emotional timestamps. You just have to be present enough to catch them. So stop looking for the perfect answer to your perfect question. Let her unfold at her own pace, because the more relaxed she is, the more honest the clues become. And sometimes, the loudest thing she says about her past is what she chooses not to say at all. Number 5, her views on men in general. One of the most revealing things a woman will ever share with you is how she talks about men, not just you, but men as a whole. And she won't even realize she's doing it. You'll hear it when she talks about her exes, her father, male friends, co-workers, even strangers on the street or actors on a screen. Listen to the tone. Does it sound casual, neutral, maybe even playful? Or is there a sharp edge behind the smile, a flicker of bitterness hiding inside a joke? Because that edge, that's not about comedy. That's about memory. When she says, "Ugh, men are the worst," it might sound harmless at first, like something light, something millions of women say without thinking. But if that line keeps showing up again and again, especially when there's emotion behind it, it usually means one thing. She didn't make that line up. She lived it. Someone or more than one someone made her feel that way. And now, that feeling is baked into her worldview. You're not just hearing her opinions, you're hearing her trust history, and that matters more than you think. Because if her foundational belief about men is that they lie, cheat, manipulate, disappear, no matter how well you treat her, that belief doesn't just vanish. It stays. It waits. It surfaces in quiet moments. When you're late replying, when you seem distant, when you're too quiet and she can't figure out why, suddenly, you're no longer just you. You're the ghost of every man who hurt her. And now, she's protecting herself from something you didn't even do. Maybe she's affectionate, flirty, even vulnerable at first. But the deeper you get, the more her instincts start to show. Maybe she gets suspicious when there's no reason to be. Maybe she pushes you away just to see if you'll fight to stay. Maybe she expects you to leave because that's what she's come to expect from men. And these aren't mood swings. They're defense mechanisms built slowly, painfully, over time. understanding this doesn't mean you excuse bad behavior, but it does mean you stop taking it personally. Because when she bristles at something small, when she withdraws after something tender, when she says you wouldn't get it and shuts down, those moments aren't always about you. They're about how she learned to survive love, how she learned to armor up so she wouldn't get blindsided again. But here's the catch. If she's still holding on to that weight, if she's carrying the betrayal, the abandonment, the heartbreak from years ago, sooner or later, she's going to hand that weight to you. Without realizing it, she'll ask you to carry it, to make up for the men who failed her, to reassure her endlessly, to prove yourself again and again. And while empathy matters, so do boundaries. You're not here to pay for someone else's damage. You're not here to be the emotional mule for every man who broke her trust. You're here to connect, to grow, to build something honest. And that only works if she's willing to see you as yourself, not as the echo of someone else's mistake. So listen closely when she talks about men. Not just what she says, but how she says it. Because in her tone, in her sarcasm, in her silence, is the story of what she's been through. And the clearer you see that story, the more you'll understand who you're really dealing with, a woman who's still healing, or one who's still holding a grudge against ghosts. Number 6, how she talks about her family. If you truly want to understand how a woman forms emotional bonds, how she gives love, receives love, and handles disappointment, pay close attention to how she talks about her family. Not the dramatic stories, not the long explanations, just the tone, the little comments, the way her voice changes when she mentions her mom or her dad, especially her dad. Because here's the quiet truth. Her relationship with her father often sets the emotional blueprint for how she sees men and how she believes love is supposed to feel. If she speaks of him with warmth, with respect, even a little nostalgia, that says something. It tells you she grew up with a sense of safety. That love, at least in some form, felt dependable. But if she talks about him with cold detachment, or forced indifference, or worse, doesn't talk about him at all, you need to hear what's underneath the silence. When she says, "Yeah, my dad was around, I guess. We weren't super close, but whatever." Don't ignore that whatever. That word is doing emotional heavy lifting. That word is covering up a story she may not be ready to revisit. Maybe he was physically present but emotionally unavailable. Maybe he was inconsistent kind one day, critical the next. Or maybe she had to earn his love, perform for his attention, walk on eggshells just to feel like she mattered. And now, that same pattern shows up in her adult relationships, like a script she never chose, but keeps reciting anyway. A woman who grew up chasing her father's approval might find herself constantly seeking reassurance. She may need you to remind her she's wanted, even when you've shown it 100 times. She may overthink your silence, fear your absence, expect the love to suddenly go cold, because that's what she was taught to prepare for. And unless she's done the work to rewrite that belief, she'll bring that same fear into every new connection. On the other hand, if she was raised in a home that was stable, emotionally attuned, where love was steady, not perfect, but reliable, you'll notice something different. She won't panic when things get quiet. She won't assume the worst during a disagreement. She'll likely express her needs with clarity, not confusion. She'll breathe through conflict, because her emotional nervous system isn't wired for chaos. It's wired for connection. You don't need to dig deep to figure this out. Just watch her. How she talks about holidays, whether she smiles when she shares childhood memories or rolls her eyes. Does she light up when you ask about family, or does her energy go flat, like she's closing a door you're not allowed to open. Those little cues, those passing remarks, are the access points. They tell you more than any long conversation ever could. And here's something few people realize: most of us don't outgrow the emotional language we were raised with. We might learn new words, but when things get hard, we fall back on what's familiar. The way she learned to give and receive love at home becomes the unspoken script she carries into every romantic relationship. So if you want to know how she'll love you, how she'll fight, forgive, withdraw, or stay, start by noticing how she learned to love, not in theory, but in practice, in real life, in the living room she grew up in. Because that's not just her past, it's her foundation, and everything you build with her will rest on it. Number 7, what makes her emotional and what doesn't. If you really want to understand where someone's been, what's shaped them, what still lingers beneath the surface, watch what stirs their emotions. And just as importantly, what doesn't. I'm not talking about dramatic tears or loud reactions. I'm talking about those quiet moments when something hits her in a way even she didn't expect, when her body reacts before her mind catches up. That's where the real story lives. Maybe it's a movie scene, something about loss or abandonment, and suddenly she goes silent. Not because the acting was great, but because something buried got touched. Maybe it's a song she always skips, not because she hates the melody, but because the lyrics are too close to home. Or maybe it's something subtle, like being left out of a group invite or someone raising their voice. And instead of brushing it off, she freezes or overreacts or shuts down completely. That intensity, that withdrawal, that's not about the moment. That's about the memory. Because people don't overreact without history. When a woman has a reaction that feels bigger than the situation, that's not drama. That's a scar. That's an old wound getting poked. And sometimes, even she doesn't know where it comes from, but it's real. It's emotional muscle memory. It's her nervous system saying, this has happened before, and it hurt. Now flip it. What about when she doesn't react at all? When something emotional happens, a breakup in a friend group, someone sharing pain, and she just nods. Like it's nothing that can be just as telling, because numbness isn't always strength. Sometimes it's a survival skill, built after years of learning that feeling too much leads to disappointment, or that showing emotion makes you a target. So she shut it off. She trained herself to stay unfazed, and now she barely flinches, even when something deep is unfolding. That kind of detachment. It's not coldness, it's armor. And while it might look impressive, like she's strong or stoic, it often means she had to grow up too fast. She had to become her own protector before she even knew what that meant. And now, vulnerability feels foreign, dangerous, weak, even though deep down, she craves it. You won't uncover this by asking, what makes you emotional? Because most people don't even know the answer, or they've spent so long hiding it. They can't put it into words. But if you're paying attention, really paying attention, you'll see it. In the way she avoids certain topics, in the way her energy shifts when someone else gets emotional, in the little tells the tight jaw, the quick breath, the sudden change in subject. These are her emotional footprints, the silent trails that lead straight back to the version of her that she had to bury just to keep moving. The truth is, what makes her emotional and what leaves her cold tells you everything about what she's still carrying. And once you understand that, once you can see through the surface, you'll never mistake her silence for peace again. Because sometimes The quietest women have the loudest pasts. Number 8. Observation over interrogation. The smartest men don't ask 1,000 questions. They don't interrogate. They observe. Because here's the truth anyone can ask. What happened in your last relationship? And they'll usually get the safe version, the polished, edited summary. The one she's told herself enough times that it feels clean, controlled. But a man who truly pays attention, he already knows the real answer before she even speaks it. He sees it in the way she tenses up when plans change, in the way her voice drops when things get too intimate, in the flicker of relief when you show up on time, like she didn't expect you would. These aren't coincidences. They're emotional fingerprints, left behind by past experiences she never wanted, but still carries. And the man who watches, really watches, reads all of that without needing to dig. Being observant doesn't mean being cold or calculating or playing games. It means being emotionally literate. It means reading her body language, her timing, her tone, the space between her words. Because that's where the truth lives. Not in the answers she gives you when she feels cornered, but in the stories she doesn't realize she's telling with her behavior, with her patterns, with her energy. Most people rely on words to connect, but words are only part of the story. Sometimes, they're the most misleading part, because the most damaging stories we carry are the ones we don't talk about. And if she's been hurt before, if she's built up walls just to survive love, then she's not going to hand you the full truth on a silver platter. She'll hand you pieces, moments, reactions. And it's up to you to put them together, not to judge her, not to fix her, but to see her fully, honestly, without illusion. You can learn more about someone in silence than in a dozen deep conversations. The way she flinches at affection, the way she pulls away when she feels too seen, the way she lights up when someone finally praises her for more than just how she looks. These are not random, these are signals, invitations to look deeper, to listen with more than just your ears. And here's the key. You don't chase these answers. You invite them. You create space. You make her feel safe enough that the mask starts to slip. Not because you asked the right question, but because she forgot to keep guarding herself. That's when the truth appears. That's when you see the woman behind the performance. Because when you rely only on what she says, you're often buying the version she built to protect herself. But when you rely on what she shows unintentionally, unconsciously, you're seeing something raw, something real. You're seeing the version of her that still wants to be known, even if she's scared of being seen. So no, you don't need to interrogate. You don't need to dig. You just need to pay attention. Because the truth always leaks out in the pauses, the patterns, the reactions. The only question is, are you sharp enough to catch it? Number 9, conclusion and call to action. If you've made it this far, you're already light years ahead of most men. Because now, you're not just listening to what a woman says. You're learning how to see her, really see her. You're tuning in to the subtle signals, the patterns, the pauses, and you're realizing her past isn't always told in words. It's written in her reactions, her silence, her tension, her laughter, her deflection, her timing. And now that you know what to look for, you'll never unsee it. Because this is the shift that changes everything. You stop falling for the highlight reel. You stop chasing polished stories and perfect answers. And you start connecting on a deeper level, a level grounded in emotional awareness, in clarity, in truth. You waste less time. You spot the red flags faster. You build stronger bonds not just based on attraction, but on understanding. And look, maybe one insight hit you harder than the rest. Maybe it was the way she talks about other women, or how she avoids conflict. Maybe it was something you heard in her silence. If that moment stood out, if something clicked, drop a comment and let me know. I read every single one. And yes, I mean that, because this space, it's for men who think deeper, who move smarter, who want to lead with strength and emotional intelligence, not just surface-level charm. And if that's you, if you're the kind of man who wants to understand the deeper layers, the psychology, the emotional patterns most guys completely miss, then hit that subscribe button right now, because this is just the beginning. In the next video, I'm breaking down the 5 types of emotional baggage you can spot within the first 10 minutes of meeting a woman and how to tell whether she's healed or hiding. Until then, keep your eyes open, keep your standards high, and above all, keep your peace protected. I'll see you in the next one.